Hey everybody, what's going on? Eric here with Switch Adapted Toys, and I'm really excited to show you this video. Today, we're going to be adapting these two droids that we got at the Droid Depot in Disneyland. If you haven't checked out our Disneyland video yet, I encourage you to check it out. It was a lot of fun to make. Basically, we took a family vacation to Anaheim to go to Disneyland, and while we were there, we did some shopping for Switched. And we went into all the gift shops and we found all the toys that we could find that could be Switch adapted. And we picked a lot of those up, and we're going to create videos, how-to videos, so that you can adapt them yourself. And something that was really special that we did while we were at the park, we adapted some bubble blowers and gave them out to kiddos that we found in the park, and just gave them away. And it was a lot of fun to see their faces and their parents' faces kind of light up by having a toy that their child could play with in the park itself. If you've ever been to Disneyland, you know they always have bubble blowers and light up toys that come out, and it's kind of a special thing for kiddos. And we just wanted everyone to be able to experience that. So check out our Disneyland video and check out our other videos of toys that we adapted from Disneyland. And if this is your first video that you've stumbled across, or you're just new to what we do here, Switch Adapted Toys is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to make play possible for kiddos of all abilities. We do that by creating how-to videos like this one, showing people how to adapt toys on their own. And we also have files for people to 3D print their own Switch button at significantly less price than going out and purchasing them from like the main brand Switches out there. And all those resources are completely free on our website. So check that out at www.switchtoys.org. So we found these droids in Galaxy's Edge, which is the Star Wars area of the park, there at Droid Depot. Which is a lot of fun because the kiddos can go in there and kind of pick all their parts for their droid and assemble it there. And then it comes with a remote, which controls them. What I did is I basically asked them, I told them kind of what I was doing, and I asked them if I could just purchase a separate remote, because it generally just comes with one. And it's not something that they seem like they always do, but they did sell me one. If you ask nicely, they might sell you one too. It was like $20 or $25 for just the remote. And so now I can adapt this and kind of control whatever droid we have. And I don't destroy my daughter's droids, so they're not gonna be mad at me either. But follow along, let's get into it. And yeah, let's do it. So I was editing this video and I realized that a lot of this footage is out of focus. I'm really sorry about that. I wish I could go back and reshoot the whole thing, but unfortunately I only have one remote, and it would essentially require me to take another trip back to Disneyland to purchase a new one, which doesn't sound that bad, but please forgive my poor camera skills this time. I think I got everything that I needed to get in focus for you to adapt this toy, so you should still be able to follow along. But again, just forgive my poor camera skills. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the 4 screws on the back of the remote. All right, so with those 4 screws removed, we should be able to separate the 2 halves of the remote, and we can set the top of the remote aside, because all we really need to focus on is the back and this circuit board here. Now you can see on the circuit board all these little rubber gasket buttons. This is what the physical button actually presses, and that's what completes the circuit here on the circuit board. So if I just kind of pull one of these out, you can see that it's made up of these discs that have 2 sides. And when you press down on the button, this little black piece in there basically completes the circuit of both of those 2 sides. So what we can do in general when we come across these discs is you can solder our headphone jacks to each side of that disc. Now doing that is going to kind of prevent it from being able to be used normally. Like we wouldn't want to put this back on there because this button will probably end up dislodging our connections. These discs, soldering to these discs is just kind of inherently weak. So what we'll do after we solder them is we'll actually put some hot glue on there just to kind of try to lock everything in place the best that we can. But it's totally doable. It's just a little bit more challenging than some of our other toys that we have adapted. So we need to get our headphone jack wires into this remote somehow. And so I need to drill some holes so that I can fish my headphone jack wire into the remote. Now I kind of want the remote to be able to sit flat. It'd be really easy just to kind of drill through the back side of this remote. But what I'm gonna do is instead I'm gonna try to drill them out the side. And I'm gonna kind of try to coordinate them so that they're at least in a place that makes sense relative to the button position. You know, if you only have one switch button, you know which one to plug it into in order to do that command. So I'm just gonna go around, and I need 8 holes, and I'll need 8 headphone jacks. All right, so I've got all my holes drilled, and I was just trying to be really careful of where I was drilling into so that I don't hit any of like the support structure inside here. But just take your time, go slow, and I think it'll be just fine. All right, so let's talk a second about our headphone jacks. I would really recommend that you find a mono headphone jack. You know it's mono because it'll have 2 wires out one end. Mono headphone jacks are a little bit harder to find, but it's worth it, trust me. In the past, we've had videos where we've used stereo, but you have to wire them in a certain way, and you just don't have to worry about that with mono headphone jacks. So you can buy them in like packs of 10 on Amazon. Just make sure you're getting mono. And I'll put a link in the description for the ones that we use. All right, so I'm gonna just start with one. I won't show you how we do all of them. I'll just kind of speed that up. But you're gonna basically repeat this step for all 8 headphone jacks. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fish my headphone jack wires through the hole that we drilled in the side of the remote. And I'm just gonna kind of pull out a bunch of extra slack just to make it easier for me to work. And before we solder our wires to the discs, it's a good idea to get some solder on the wires ahead of time. It'll just make things a lot easier and maybe prevent you from burning up the circuit board by doing this. So all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna get a glob of solder on the tips of my wires. Now my wires come with a little bit of solder already on them, but if you can get kind of like a little bit of a blob, just kind of like that, just a little bit extra. Then what I'm going to do is when I go to solder it to the disc, all I really need to do is heat up that blob and get it to stick to that circuit board. So that's all you really need, just like that. And now let's solder it to the disc. All right, so some time has passed and I've been trying to mess with this, trying to get it to work, and I've learned something. You know, I've never done this toy before, so you always kind of learn things as you go along. There's like a coating on these discs that was preventing me from soldering to them. Basically, I just used a pair of tweezers and just to kind of scratch the surface of that disc. You want to be careful when you do this because you don't want to scratch too far because you might render it you know, unusable. But if you kind of just scratch off this layer, I might have to do it. So if you just kind of scratch off this layer and expose a little bit of the copper underneath this, whatever this layer is, then you can solder to it, as you can see I did here. All right, so now you might be able to see I kind of have scratched away some of that coating and I've exposed some of the copper kind of underneath. Now I should be able to solder to it. So I'm just gonna do another one here. I'm gonna start by fishing my wire through the hole that I drilled. And now I'm gonna get some solder on the tips of these wires. Just like that. And then I can heat the solder that I put on the wires and get it to stick to that disc. And you can give your wires a little bit of a tug just to make sure that they're connected well. And I'm really trying to stay to the outside of this disc so that I don't risk getting any solder that kind of crosses over from one half to the other. Okay, so just like that, I've got my headphone jack soldered. I kind of fish the cord down there. Now let's just test this and just make sure that it works. So I'm going to turn the droid on. I had paired the remote to the droid, and I'm going to plug in a switch button. This is our mini switch that we just came out. The files are available on our website if you want to print your own. And let's give the button a press and see what it does. There we go. All right, so now I'm gonna go around. I won't bore you by showing you how I do all of them, but I'm gonna go around and solder the rest of them. Okay, so that was a lot harder than I had anticipated. Mistakes were made, but I think I got everything kind of adapted. The problem are a couple of things I ran into. One, the discs are super fragile. So scratching it with the tip of my tweezers was a bad idea. I was getting a lot better results kind of just scratching it with something kind of more blunt. Even with my fingernail, I've got that goop all over my fingernail. But these things are so fragile. You really need to be careful. Moving the wires around after they're soldered can kind of tear those discs apart, which is what happened. You can see this disc I basically shredded to pieces. Luckily I was able to get a little bit on one half, and I was able to do the other wire to the negative terminal on the battery. Same thing went for this one here. Luckily there was a little node here that basically can bypass it, so I was able to solder to there and there. So I got everything in place. I got lucky, quite honestly. This is not easy. If you take your time, go slow, be real careful, it can be done. What I would recommend you do is, as you go and after you solder, get some hot glue on these discs just to kind of lock everything in place. I wasn't doing that, so as I was kind of moving everything around, getting other wires into place, I was like knocking others off. I'll be honest with you, it was a pain, but it can be done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some hot glue on all these areas where I've got my wires, just to try to, again, lock it into place. And then what I need to do is I need to put some zip ties around each of these wires so that it prevents a child from pulling the cord out and disconnecting everything. So that's what I'm going to do now. Luckily, or hopefully I don't disconnect anything while I'm going. But as of right now, everything is working. All right, so now that I've got everything hot glued, I'm gonna put a zip tie around each of these wires on the inside of the toy. And again, that's just gonna act like a barrier. So if a child were to yank on this cord, it doesn't just pull the whole thing out and disconnect our connections. And I'm gonna cut the extra zip tie. And then I like to use a little CA glue or super glue. And I just kind of put a glob kind of around that zip tie just to help lock it into place. And if you have any, you can use some activator spray, which basically instantly dries that glue. Now I'm just going to go around and do the same thing to all the other cords. All right, so now that we got all the zip ties around our cords, I'm gonna just glue these buttons into place because I'm really nervous about them being pressed and like dislodging our connections on those discs. So I'm just gonna use some super glue, and I'm just gonna kind of glue all these buttons kind of into place so that they can't be pressed anymore. And now we can screw on the back. All right, so that's pretty much it. I've got all of our buttons plugged in. I know this kind of looks ridiculous with how many cords I have on the table here. You don't have to have every button plugged in, but What's nice about our 3D printed switch buttons is that you could print your own for about $5 a piece. So if these were to like be name brand switches, this would be like hundreds of dollars worth of switches, which is ridiculous. So that was kind of our whole point for creating these switch buttons. So check out the files on our website, and I'm just gonna go around and I'm just gonna kind of show you what everything does. So this should make the droid go forward. This should make the droid go backwards. This should make the sounds. It's a very sad droid. This should turn the droid to the left. It should turn the droid to the right. This should turn the droid's head to the right. And this should turn the droid's head to the left. This button here, I'm not really sure what it does, quite honestly. I think it's just used for pairing. There's not even like a symbol on the button. So we probably didn't need to adapt that one, but that's fine. So I'll be really honest with you, this toy is kind of difficult to adapt. We ran into a lot of challenges. We were able to do it. It's definitely doable. You just might want to take your time and just be real careful when you're dealing with those discs. But if you can adapt it, I think a kiddo is going to really enjoy it. Being able to play with a droid that they made in Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, it's a cool toy. I think kiddos are going to really enjoy it. And if anyone's out there from Disney parks or Disney Imagineering, it would be really great to have an adapted controller available for people who need it, that has the headphone jacks built into the remote, so all you have to do is plug in a button, and then you're just gonna you allow anyone that needs switch adapted resources to be able to use your toys and enjoy them in the parks and just have that experience from a company that does inclusion pretty darn well, with all the disability access service and all the inclusiveness, all the Make-A-Wish projects and all that kind of stuff that you guys do. I feel like it would be a really easy thing to do to allow a child to play with this toy and not have to go through this rigmarole just to do so. And the droid thinks so too. So if you know anybody in Disney Imagineering or Disney parks, share this video with them. Maybe we can make some change there. That would be great. And I hope you like this video. If you find it helpful, make sure you hit the like button and hit subscribe to stay up to date on all our latest videos. Switch Adapted Toys is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to make play possible for kiddos of all abilities. If you want to find out more about all of our resources, you could do so on our website at www.switchtoys.org. I also invite you to check out our Disneyland video, where we went shopping in Disneyland and found some toys to adapt and gave them out in the parks. It was a really fun video to make. It really mean a lot to us if you check that out. And if you've got a group or an organization and you want to adapt toys kind of on a bigger scale for kids in your community, you could form what we call a Switch chapter, where we basically help guide you through that process so that you could bring Switch to your community and serve the kids in your community in that way. Lastly, if you're interested in a Switch adapted toy but doing it yourself just isn't your thing, that's totally fine. We have a shop where we sell some pre-adapted toys that are ready to play with. The proceeds help support what we're doing here and creating these content and creating these videos. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'll put a link in the description below. Well, that's it. I'm Eric with Switch Adapted Toys, and we'll see you next time.
Switch Adapted Toys, making play possible.